I think about certainly my career as being persistent but flexible in a certain direction, not necessarily with a fixed goal in mind. And I prioritize learning over money, especially early in your career. Just as startups should really optimize on learning what's happening and what works and what doesn't work over making cash in the short term. And in the long run, I think that serves you well. You may not make as much in year 3, but in year 10 you will. And this comes from Reid, Plan A, Plan B, and Plan Z. Lunch is over. That's great. Planning is what you're doing now. Your current implementation of your competitive advantage, what you're trying to accomplish. That might not work, of course. And Plan B is a pivot, kind of a traditional pivot. When your plan isn't working, you discover a better way to go forward, something like that. Generally in the same area. Plan Z is what happens if something seriously goes wrong. So when Reid was founding LinkedIn, he actually talks about his Plan A, Plan B, and Plan Z. His Plan Z was to move back in with his parents and live in their house until he could find another job and something else to do. That was his Plan Z. Nothing's working with this, and we're going to go back to square one. Of course, now he's a multi-billionaire, so that's worked out pretty well for him, and created a company that's changing the world. So that's ABZ planning, something we encourage everyone to take a look at. And then really recognizing your network, and this is about LinkedIn itself and about other networks that you might have, and recognizing there are two kinds of professional relationships. One is your close allies, the people you trust, the people you work with every day, the people who are on your favorites list on your phone, and at the top of your WhatsApp contact list, those folks that you don't need something like LinkedIn to keep track of. LinkedIn wouldn't exist if that was all there was in the world to help you get ahead and do better. It's weaker ties and acquaintances that you really need to take advantage of. Because you can only know so many people here. There's, how many close allies can you really have? It takes a dedication of time. But weaker ties and acquaintances do a lot of things for you, including increasing the size, but also the diversity of your network. This helps with the flexibility point. If you have a network that's active and diverse, when you need to pivot, when you need to change direction, when you need to learn something you don't know, that diversity helps you a lot. And again, as I said, there's a limit to the number of people you can ever know at one time. Your friends of friends and friends and friends of friends is pretty unlimited. I think you can check the size of your network on LinkedIn. If you have 500 connections, your third degree is probably somewhere close to 1 million people. And that reach is pretty powerful. Oh, I'm going to skip this. And then finally talk about risks. And then I'm going to skip on to some of the ideas in the alliance. So taking intelligent risks. This is important. I think a lot of people are quite risk averse in making career decisions. Certainly startup founders. How many startup founders do we have in the audience? Yeah, these are people who are not risk averse. And I think probably the population here at NASSCOM is full of people who take a lot of risks with their career. But one thing to recognize is that we're wired evolutionarily to avoid risk. And so all of our estimations, all of our natural estimations of how risky something is, likely overestimate the risk. It's probably less risky than your gut tells you it is. And the way the book encourages you to think about it is if you can tolerate the worst case outcome, then you should consider it. Doesn't mean you should do it, but if the worst case is tolerable, then you can do it. If the worst case is homelessness or disease or death, then please avoid it. The lawyers will tell me not to provide advice, just to take all risks. So this is the ones you should avoid. But you are wired to overestimate risk. It's less risky than you think, and it's through taking risks. It's through taking risks that actually big breakout opportunities occur. Those are the things that provide unique paths. So that's the startup of you. If any of these things seem interesting or unfamiliar to you, I encourage you to buy the book. I don't get a commission, I promise, and read it. So I think it's quite good and straightforward. It's an easy read, but some very interesting ideas in there. Now, what came out of this is a conversation that employers had. So employers took a look at this book and says, okay, you're encouraging my people to my employees to think of themselves as startups and to manage their career independently. Well, if that's what the world's turning into, how do I as an employer think about that kind of workforce? And how do I manage them? And so the idea of the Alliance then was born out of this. And it starts with, well, imagine it's your first day of work at a company. How many people started a job this year, a new job this year? Nobody? Really? Okay, some hands. Everyone's shy. I'm not going to call on you. Don't worry. You can admit it, and I won't call on you. Your manager greets you with warm enthusiasm. That's what managers are like. Welcomes you to the family. How many people's companies use the word family? Is there? A lot of them. I'm sorry. Your company is not your family. You don't get to choose your family. But your manager expresses your hope that you'll be with the company for a long time. You say you're so excited, you're going to be a loyal employee. And then the HR department in the policies tells you that you're on a 90-day probation period. And in the US at least, you'll be an at-will employee where you can be fired for any reason or actually no reason at all. So this is the fundamental disconnect of modern employment. It's a lie. The whole thing is a lie, both sides. And the idea of the Alliance is we should embrace the fact that that's not the case, and we should work with what the real realities of today are. So companies should not be expecting employee loyalty without committing job security or professional development. And employees say they're loyal, but they leave the moment a better opportunity comes along. So as I said, this relationship is based on dishonest, maybe that's a strong word, but people don't have the language to confront and talk about what the actual situation is in a productive way. So as a result of this, employers continually lose valuable people. Employees fail to fully invest in their current job because they're looking around for the next best thing, and managers are caught in the middle. And trust in the business world is near an all-time low. This is a US survey. 70% of workers in America are not engaged with their work, according to a Gallup survey. So that doesn't sound like a good life to me. And more importantly, a business that does not have trust and loyalty is a short-term thinking business. If you're not going to be around in a couple of years, then you're not thinking long-term. So the idea in the Alliance is to rebuild the employer-employee relationship, and it introduces a new relationship framework that recognizes the fact that companies are not offering lifetime employment. Isn't that a great series of photos? Look at that. That's perfect. How does he get the same shirt and the same sweater across 5 decades? It's fantastic. And the same glasses, too, almost. It's terrific. Your company's not a family. I think you cheered that. It's not a family, thank God. So we stop thinking of employees as families of free agents and start thinking of employees as allies on a tour of duty. Okay? So the concept of a tour of duty is key here, something we use at LinkedIn in a very explicit way. This is Deepa, who heads our corporate comms for India. Deepa, is this something you talk about, tour of duty with your manager? Yeah, so we actually live it at LinkedIn. And it's an alliance, mutually beneficial deal with explicit terms and between independent players, the company and the employee. Okay, so yes, Employees invest in the company's success, and the company invests in employees' market value. Even if that means the employee is going to leave you in a few years. Even if that's the case. You're better off in aggregate if you acknowledge that, and if your company can't offer someone their next great opportunity, that they leave and go pursue that somewhere else with your blessing. In aggregate, you're better off. You lose that one, but you win across the board. So, employer and employee can risk committing to each other to pursue bigger payoffs, and you organize it this way, around a tour of duty. Now, this is a military term. I don't know if the Indian armed forces have this notion of a tour of duty, but this is a common parlance in the United States. A single deployment. You're going to be deployed to some field operation for a period of time, 18 months, something like this. Now, this is not making an analogy that you should run a business like a military unit, just the opposite. Please don't get me wrong. But the notion of a tour of duty is an important one. And that is, they focus on accomplishing a specific finite mission. And in business, what this means is a tour of duty is an ethical commitment on both sides to take something to completion over a period of time, and then reassess the relationship. So it's written down, ideally. Doesn't always need to be written down. Deepa, I'm not sure if yours is written down with your manager. Mine's not with my manager, but we both know what it is. And it has a specific mission and a realistic time horizon. And I'd suggest the time horizon is on the order of 18 months, 2 years, maybe a year, maybe 3 years, where you're making an explicit commitment to the employer that you intend to stay for that period of time and accomplish that mission. And the employer is making an explicit commitment to you that during that period of time, they're going to invest in you so that you're in a better position at the end of that period of time. And then you'll talk and see what's next. Now, there's also rules in the book about when and how to break that commitment, because you might have to. There might be family reasons. There might actually be a breakout opportunity that you need to take at another company. So it's not to say it never happens, but you're having an explicit conversation about it rather than wondering. And it's important that the employer provides specific career benefits to the employee. Specific, like, you'll get a chance to develop excellent negotiation skills. This tour of duty will have you doing a lot of negotiation with external partners. We're going to get you some training classes or a coach or a mentor to enhance that. And at the end, you'll have some accomplishments that you can put on your LinkedIn profile that explicitly attest to your ability to negotiate complex deals. For example, you've got to avoid things like you'll get valuable experience. That's true, but you have to be explicit about what that valuable experience is. So, the central paradox is this: by acknowledging that your employees might leave is how you get them to stay. So something I talk about with my team, so I have a team of product managers. It's a relatively small team right now. I think it's 25 people or so, but I've managed teams as big as 250 in the past. And when someone's thinking about, occasionally someone will say, I've got a job offer from so-and-so, and I'm thinking of leaving. One of the things I say is, listen, that might be a great job, but imagine how much better an opportunity you could get if you finished your current tour of duty, shipped your products, and worked with me and Reed and the executive team at LinkedIn to help you find an opportunity with all their connections in Silicon Valley, instead of you taking this one that you found sort of on the side without being able to leverage the power of the executive team at LinkedIn. That's a pretty powerful argument, and that's won the day in many cases, and we'll deliver on that. When the employee is ready to leave, then they can sit down with us and say, I think it's time for me to do my startup. Can you introduce me to some investors? Or I'd really want to take something in the wearable space. It's been a passion of mine for a long time, and LinkedIn's not going to be in there. So can you help me find something in the wearable space? And at LinkedIn, we actually deliver on that. We'll help people we'll use our networks to help people find their their next tour of duty outside of LinkedIn. And that encourages them to stay. So employees and job roles differ. There are 3 types of tours: rotational, foundational, and transformational. I'm not going to go through this. It's in the book if you really care. If you're an HR manager or someone who wants to think about implementing this at your organization, again, I encourage you to either buy the book or actually just go out to SlideShare, a LinkedIn company, and look for this. The whole slide deck is there. And a lot of these I've trimmed it down here, and a lot of these ideas are there. So I'm really not trying to get you to buy the book. We really care. Reed doesn't need the commission check for sure. He actually gives it all to charity anyways. But you know, engagement with the ideas is what's important. So if you're interested in the details around these 3 things, check out the SlideShare deck or buy the book. You know, like this, I see this really working, because it's easy now to have very mature conversations with my team about what they're trying to accomplish, when they might leave, and there's a lot of pressure and tension that's relieved by getting that out in the open. Re-emphasizing one of the important things is a set time frame. It can't be that vague, and it can't be 5 years probably, unless you're CEO. That's a different story entirely. But most people are thinking in 2-year chunks, 3-year chunks, 18 months. It's not a 5-year time frame. I think this is mostly, yeah, so re-emphasizing this, right? You may worry that the tour of duty gives them permission to leave, but they have permission to leave. You don't have to give it to them. They're free to leave when they want to. Now, you're going to leave? Yes. Okay, go ahead. She has permission, though. It's polite to ask permission, but they can switch whenever they want to. And if they do it, they'll move behind your back. So I think I've covered basically most of the territory, and again, more details in the book. So that's all I have in terms of formal presentation materials. I'd love to hear from some of you, either comments or questions or experiences that you had that are in line with this, whether your company operates this way at all. And we have 5 copies of the book here to pass out to the first 5 people who ask questions. Oh, look at that. We got the hands up now. We'll start here.
Okay, I will ask you more generic and then I'll get specific. Next 4 or 5 years, if you look at Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, where do you see? Do you feel LinkedIn would be still the top 3 or better than them? And what would be the future? Because you have already built in a lot of things which are useful, right? And how are you going to see the roadmap in 4 or 5 years for LinkedIn?
So this is a LinkedIn question, not an Alliance question, but we'll give them the book anyways. Well, you know, listen, I'm not sure what Facebook and Twitter are doing. They have their own ideas. LinkedIn's focused on the professional context. That's what we're focused on. So our mission is to connect the world's professionals and make them more productive and successful. You know, there is a social aspect to LinkedIn. It's sort of a social network in a sense, professional network we call it. But we are going to stay focused on that professional context. If you want to understand, you know, 7, 10 years out, our vision is to provide economic opportunity for everyone in the global workforce. So there's 700 million professionals in the world. There's 3.3 billion people in the global workforce. So we want to extend beyond knowledge workers to everyone who uses skills to make a living. But even then, even with a giant overlap with Facebook there in terms of users, the context will be different. Ones will be friends and family, the other one will be work. Oh, lots of hands now. Oh, Deepa, you're going to have to help me here. Okay, we'll start here.
You can see I'm desperate for the book. So you really touched upon a very interesting concept that, you know, I have a different analogy too, which is pretty provocative, but I'll just share it over here. I feel the same way for marriage. Not a place for here to discuss it.
Okay.
I feel if marriages were 2 years renewable lease, probably we'll have less divorces. But that set aside.
I like that. Somebody tweet that.
But that set aside, I think the question I have for you is, we are seeing a trend where increasingly percentage of our developers, especially in the IT space, are not working for companies. They're working for either freelance or working for themselves, which is very similar to what you shared in terms of coming in with a tour of duty, coming in for a fixed rotation, and then choosing whether you want to stay or not. The question that I have is, this poses a lot of challenges structurally. We are coming off, or we still are in a very command and control structure, which is the foundation of the organizations. We're talking about organizations getting flat, but we're quite not there in terms of percentages. So as you think about this idea, I think this is an idea that's time has come. I think we are seeing democratization of power and communication and all of that across the world. So what does it mean? Have you guys seen companies that have been on this path where a bigger percentage of their workforce is more contractual in nature, or that tour of duty, versus going in looking for, even if it's not lifetime employment, close to lifetime employment? And what kind of changes it is pushing, what kind of pressures it's pushing on the organizational structures?
Yeah, so, I mean, boy, there's more there than I can possibly hope to deal with, so my apologies for that in advance. I'll start with the tour of duty for marriage. No. Listen, I think hiring contractors to accomplish projects and assignments is different than having employees. Employees invest themselves in the success of the company, hopefully, in a way that an independent contractor is going to invest themselves in the success of the project, but investing themselves in the success of the company overall is a different thing. So that's the way I think about it, at least. Whereas I'm actually, as an employee of LinkedIn, because I'm an employee, I'm willing to sacrifice sometimes the goals of my project in order to advance the overall company mission. And and in a way that I wouldn't do it if I were a free agent. So I think it's a little bit different talking about a tour of duty inside a company. Now, the thing that I will say is, and I'm not sure what it's like in Bangalore, but in Silicon Valley right now, the competition for talent is as intense as it's ever been. Anybody working at LinkedIn who's at all competent can turn around tomorrow and get a job right next door, anywhere. It's really intense. So if you try to run that company as command and control, you will fail. Your people will leave because they want to be in charge of the work that they're doing. That's the kind of people we're hiring. And if you don't treat them that way, they'll just leave. So I'm not sure if that exactly answers your questions. I don't have trend data on this stuff, other than observations around the valley that you just can't ask people to do something they don't believe in anymore, because it's easy to find something they do believe in. So everything about managing and motivating a team is starting with making sure you understand what your team cares about, what they want to accomplish, and trying to connect that to the mission and of the company and the projects you're trying to get in. It's got to start from there.
Do you have any examples that you could share outside of the Silicon Valley, more into the traditional setup, where you're seeing some of this change?
Not off the top of my head, I'm sorry. I didn't hear that, I'm sorry. I'm going to, in Moby, I'm going to go back there. Yeah, okay. If you shout, then I can repeat it, or you can get the...
So what is a good way? So is there any, there is not much revenue in a company, and also I need to give good salary to the employees. So is ESOPs a good way, or is there any other way to keep them motivated?
Yeah, so this is in a startup environment, does this apply? I think it's a little bit different. I mean, certainly the founders have something else going, right? They're making a commitment to each other in a much deeper way. It's not an employer-employee relationship. Early employees also ought to be connected quite to the mission of the company. If I'm doing a startup, I'm not just hiring somebody who wants to be a software engineer. I want someone who wants to be a software engineer and work on this problem space and make this change in the world. Those are the people that I'm looking for, because I'm not going to compete necessarily on salary with the big companies around there. So I have to compete on mission and independence of work as well. And I think that the thing that startups have to offer really in this framework is the ability to learn and try new things and try out ideas. So for me, that's the most important ideas about startups. It comes from this. Okay, we're going to go back there now. Yes. So I'm going to make it as difficult as possible for the person with the microphone by bouncing back and forth across the room.
Thank you. So my question is that, is it even possible for the enterprise, like the huge enterprise like LinkedIn or any other, to even pay attention on individual, which they hire? So we say like invest in employees, but we see training programs, which is across. It doesn't fit for an individual. So if yes, then what are the challenges which are,
Well, okay, so I think yes, it's absolutely possible for big companies to do this. In fact, it's more important for big companies to do this because they have large populations and it just takes more focus to apply this kind of stuff to a large company. In terms of investing in people, thinking about, and I have a 20-year background in training and development before I joined LinkedIn in the online learning space. I would say e-learning, but it was before there was an internet, so I guess I probably can't say e-learning. Looking at formal training that's just such a small part of investing in someone. It's the manager's relationship with employee. It's mentorship inside the organization. It's the kind of assignments you give people so that they can actually learn something and do something that they care about. That's where the real learning happens. Training programs are supplements. They're great. Don't get me wrong. We have great training at LinkedIn. But if that's how you think about investment in employees, then you'll fail because it's really every day. Yes, please.
Maybe this might be a repetition of his question, but in another way, regarding the you said that you were managing a team of 250 members earlier, before right now. So, and you had rightly given an example of how you pulled back an employee, not in leaving the company. But sometimes what happens is, like certain companies, big companies, they have different specifications. Like you might have a support project and people get monotonous doing the same thing over and over again. So as a project manager of such work, you yourself know that you're making people do the same thing over and over again.
Yep.
Okay, but how do you keep them motivated? Because that's the demand, that's what you have to do, and you also have your goals and sets to meet up. So what do you suggest to such type of work?
Yeah, so that's another talk entirely that I'm not sure I prepared to give because actually
No, that was just from your experience.
No. Let me see what I can do with that on the spot. See how clever I am. When the answer comes out badly, I'll blame it on jet lag. So I used to manage customer operations at LinkedIn. That's a customer service role. So it's the kind of work I think you're referring to.
Yeah.
And our turnover in the customer service function, I don't know. What do you think it was on a yearly basis? Yeah, less than 5%. So pretty remarkable in that operation, and a lot of that had to do with redefining the mission of that group and taking lots of emphasis off of productivity, and recognizing that people wanted to do a good job pleasing customers, and in that case, giving them the flexibility and trusting that they would be as productive as possible, and that you don't have to be suspicious of them, that they're trying to get out of doing work, and so you have to watch everything they're doing very closely, which is what I see a lot of contact center operations behaving like. I spent a fair amount of time in contact centers over my career, behaving like. And I have found personally, if you pay a little more to hire good people, and you tell them we trust you to be productive, and to do what needs to be done to take care of the customer, it changes their whole relationship with the job. And they know that if they go across the street for 10% more pay, they're going to be in an environment that's looking over their shoulder and is acting as if they're going to screw up or they're going to try to get away with something, and they'll stay. So that's been my experience. Yes, please. Oh, you're holding it. Why don't you go?
Okay. So two things. One is actually a feedback. The other is a question. Feedback is on the LinkedIn app for the mobile. It's
Deepa,
not.
do you want to take this down?
It is definitely not user friendly at all. I've tried the iPad, iPhone, and even the
It's a good
Android.
thing that I'm not the product manager for the
Yeah,
for the-
so
for
I
the
have
app,
been
so.
wanting to give this feedback to somebody. So since you are here, there you go.
Yeah, actually, just in the interest of everybody's time here, I don't think they're interested in hearing your particular complaints, but I'm happy to take that offline.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So the question really is on the professional networks piece, right? So today it still feels, if I go to LinkedIn, Facebook is a different thing, right? But in a professional space, when you network with somebody, you come back, you connect on LinkedIn, the most sort of basic thing most people do is reach out by sending a message. But I feel like it's just sort of the beginning. But what is the overall LinkedIn vision and how to make it far more interactive and user-friendly? Do you guys have a vision already, more multimedia mode of communication sort of built into the application itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think of course we do. I'm gonna apologize and take that offline too, and we'll try to stay on the subject of this talk, and I'm happy to talk to you offline about that. Okay? Yes, please.
So every country has its own culture, different level of integrity, different myths. So how do you implement it across the globe? I understand, so looking at a country, it could be much easier to implement, but implementing globally for organization like LinkedIn, what are the challenges and how did you or organization address it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely true. Absolutely true. And if you go to a place like Japan and contrast that to what I'm saying here about Silicon Valley, like thinking that that's going to apply directly there is foolish. This is why it's career lessons from Silicon Valley, not necessarily how to do things everywhere in the world. But this is what we're seeing. Is it a trend that's going to take over the world, or is it isolated to innovative technology companies in high demand, low unemployment areas? I don't know. You can ask McKinsey or something to do a study of this and get an answer. But I think there is a fundamental recognition here that, and we see this happening throughout Europe right now. The Great Recession and the globalization of the economy is going to mean, I believe it is going to mean, that the lifetime protections for employment that exist in many places in the world are going to be dismantled. Whether that's going to be in 3 years or 30 years, I don't know. But you're already seeing labor reform in Italy, in Spain, in France, in Japan, in a way that makes it easier for employers to let go of employees. And so I think these trends are going to be much broader than the West Coast of the United States. And it starts with a fundamental recognition that the individual, that if the company does not invest in the individual and is not making a commitment, which it won't be able to, then the employee is going to be looking around for other things to do and a way to be safe and keep their family fed and all of the other things that they want to be able to do. And as soon as that contract, as soon as that kind of comes into the equation, you get this dynamic, and you need to think about how to change and start to have a conversation about it. That is, it's going to differ culture by culture. We just have it very directly and explicitly. A bunch of engineers sitting in Silicon Valley. We're just very direct. Probably applies here in Bangalore to this crew at least. Maybe doesn't apply in other contexts. So, yes, please. Oh, you had, okay. Hi, how are you? Good to see you again. And then I think we've got time for, I don't know, one more question or two more questions or something. Okay.
So this policy of hire the best and leave the rest to them, right? So the real kick in the ownership-driven model, where you give the entire ownership to the person, and expect him to do what it is. At the end of the day, there is also a purpose for the project or a top line which has to be met, right? So how do you ensure that the person, and the real kick when a person is working on something is doing it my way, right? So how do you make sure that this balance is achieved? Is there some sort of framework?
So listen, I hope I didn't intend to be saying just hire the best and let them do what they think see as fit. I mean, that's crazy talk, right? It's a question of emphasis, right? And the company has objectives. Those objectives need to be met. Some portion of your work is going to be doing stuff you don't like to do. That's just the case. If that's all of your work, that's not okay. So it's a question of balance. For me, I always try to set goals with my team, and the methods by which they achieve those goals, as long as they're ethical and kind and consistent with the values of the company, I don't care how they do them. So I don't care that they do it my way. I care that they do it. They meet the goals in a way that they are comfortable with, and treat fellow employees with respect, and don't break the rules. But people are always going to have to do stuff they don't like. I do it all the time. But I have enough of my life, my work life, where I feel like I get to make real choices and decisions and impacts that affect how things happen, that I do the drudgery with just happily, because it needs to get done. All right, one last question. Yes, sir.
Do you see the work week reducing in future? I mean, I just want to work 20 hours. I want the rest of the 20 hours to be leisure, do what I want to do, and still be a very productive part of the workforce.
I think you end up being a freelancer in that case.
You don't see him as an employee, as a 20-hour?
I think it's possible. Listen, a woman I hired to start up a new team at LinkedIn, Rolly Saxena is her name. She's fantastic. Her current tour of duty, she wanted to spend more time at home. She's job splitting with somebody else at LinkedIn. So the two of them are sharing a job. So she's trying to make that work. I think it's very hard to do, but possible. Now, here's the reason why I don't see that happening. It's a competitive world out there. And at some point, actually the amount of effort you put into something, the amount of time you put into it, creates more output and excellence. I mean, there's limits to that. You can burn out all of that stuff. But I see that every day, and that working harder leads to better results in many cases. So I don't see that in particular happening. Maybe it's a sad answer, but that's the answer I have. It's an increasingly competitive world. As technology flattens the world and the competition comes from all over the place, intelligence, access to information, all of that matters. But at the end of the day, working hard matters a lot. Thank you very much.